Yeah, I mean, look, strange verdict. This was a rape claim. It was a rape case all along, and the jury rejected that, but made other findings. So we'll obviously be appealing those other findings, but they rejected her rape claim, and she'd always claimed this was a rape case. So it's a little perplexing, but we move forward.
Did you speak to Mr. Trump, and what did he tell you?
We've spoken, and we're ready to proceed, go forward. Obviously, he's firm in his belief, as many people are, that he cannot get a fair trial in New York City, based on the jury pool. And I think one could argue that that's probably an accurate assessment, based on what happened today. Again, it's something that we're very confident on the appellate issues here. The Access Hollywood tape should not have come into this case. Some other things shouldn't come into the case. I mean, we made many motions that we thought would create issues for appeal, and we're going to employ them now. There were things that happened in this case that were beyond the pale. I mean, we made a mistrial motion and went through the trial because of some of the rulings and we believe a bias that was displayed by the court. This judge has been overturned already once by the Second Circuit in Carroll versus Trump, and we think he's going to be overturned a second time.
Well, there it is. Joe Tacopina, Trump's lawyer. We're going to discuss that because something just came to mind, and Attorney Tarver is with us this morning. And what came to mind is he mentioned appeals. Well, Trump has appointed so many judges, this just might work for him. We'll talk about that on Let It Be Known this morning. We'll also talk about run, hide, fight, the new message, or the message of a new and very intense PSA from the FBI and how to survive mass shootings. The 4-minute and 30-second announcement, which first debuted a couple of years ago, was recirculated yesterday as a result of the record pace of mass shootings already in 2023. And it really is a testament to where this country is right now.
We're excited to share something new at B&H. Whether you're in New York City.
Okay, so I'm hearing like music. I'm like, get ready to jam. We're going to discuss that. And also civilians making traffic stops instead of the police. Well, that might be a reality in Los Angeles, and we will tell you about that. And TurboTax is sending out checks to people this month after a class action settlement in which it was alleged that the company steered low-income folks away from the free IRS tax filing services. Also this morning, today, Representative George Santos is expected to appear in a Manhattan courtroom. Everything is happening in Manhattan courtrooms these days. He's going to answer to federal charges that could include campaign fraud, finance fraud, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one of Santos's heroes, of course, as we just talked about, has been found liable by a New York jury of sexual assault and defamation. Yep, we're talking about the twice impeached and criminally indicted former President Donald Trump. We discussed all that with my man Barrington Salmon and the one and only attorney from New Jersey, Robert Tarver from the Tarver Law Firm. Welcome, guys.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. So, what's interesting, Attorney Tarver, before we get into this long and humiliating path to shame of Donald Trump, we watched at the top, Greer played the press conference, the courthouse steps press conference of Joe Tacopina. Every time I see Joe Tacopina, Trump's attorney, and every time I see Tucker Carlson, I'm reminded, I worked with these guys some years ago at MSNBC. They wasn't these guys.
No, not at all. I worked at MSNBC as well, and these guys have gone through this metamorphosis, this generation. They've gotten to where they want to be because this is where the money is. Tucker got to where he is because he recognized that there was a pathway to making a lot more money than there was before. And Joe Tacopina, quite frankly, he was a defense attorney of a different quality, but he's gone in a different direction now.
Wow. And he mentioned too about the judge's errors. What about his errors? I don't know how closely you followed this particular trial, Attorney Tarver. What about his errors? One, I mean, he was every legal expert I heard from, one of the things he did was yell at E. Jean Carroll when she was on the stand, saying to her, well, why didn't you scream? And every legal expert that I heard from and that I watched said, oh my gosh, why would you do that?
You know, it's a calculation I think that every trial attorney makes. He had a jury of 6 men and I think 3 women, and he may have been aiming for the masculine angle, which is, you know, you too could find yourself in this situation, and how outraged would you be 20 years later having someone pop up when they didn't do it before? So you know, it's a difficult situation to defend in this type of case. I'm not really necessarily defending what Joe Tacopina does, but for every defense attorney, you've got to try to find a lane, particularly when you see the evidence against you that is so strong. And here, it wasn't direct evidence, but it was really strong circumstantial evidence. All of those things put together were very difficult to defeat. So he had to take that one lane, which he had, which is that, number one, you don't know what you're talking about. Number two, it didn't happen because you can't say when and where. And the reason you can't say when and where is because it prevents, it allows us to be in a position of not being able to put together an alibi.
Yeah, we know that the bar. I'm sorry, Attorney Trump. We know that the bar is lower in civil court than it is in criminal court. He mentioned, though, something that, and I want your take on this too before we get to Barrington. He did mention a point there that the jury did not find that he raped her, that it was sexual assault and defamation. First of all, can you explain to our viewers the difference between sexual assault and rape, and how important that might be as they do appeal?
Well, the rape charge actually implies a higher degree of sexual involvement. First of all, sexual battery, sexual harassment, sexual assault, which is what they found, can be something as mere as touching in an area that is, you know, buttocks, other, you know, breasts and things of that nature. I think here the jury didn't know how far this thing actually went. In other words, they didn't know exactly how far Trump went. They believed that he had some level of touching, but how intimate was that touching? Was there some form of penetration? And that's the higher degree that's required of a rape charge. Was there some? So I think that was the dichotomy. The other thing is the word rape has so many connotations in our society that they don't even use that word in most areas anymore, because it is so highly offensive and so connected with some form of deviancy. I think that people come to these situations with a preconceived notion of what rape is and are very hesitant to move into those areas without some real evidence of sexual trauma.
And Barrington, Angela Connolly writes in that E. Jean Carroll couldn't tell if it was Trump's finger or his genitalia.
Yeah.
That's why there was no rape charge.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. SPS is real, bro. But the thing that
what is that?
That's okay. I can't say it on like company. SPS. The thing that I agree with everything that Attorney Tava said, but the thing that I think really made a difference in this case is that you have 20, 26, 28 women who have credibly accused this dude of doing pretty much what he's done. And I mean, if I was Joe Tacopina, I'd have to be looking at whether the money's worth dealing with a fool like this, because his deposition basically sunk him. He identified E. Jean Carroll as his ex-wife Marla Maples, and then he tried to justify. He's an idiot, because when the woman said, "Well, are you a star?" he said, "Well, yes, basically I am." After he said stars can do what they want, they can feel of any woman that they want. I mean, so he didn't help his case by doing that. And it's funny because this is the same dude that said he can shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and nobody would do anything. And then Tacopina's saying that he couldn't get a fair trial in New York. So these guys want to have it both ways. And so it's just I'm tired of them and their grievance politics.
And what about, and this is for both of you, you could start, Attorney Tarver, if you like, this appeal. Now, this is a federal civil case, right? Trump has appointed many of the federal judges on the appellate side. How might that play out?
Well, look, you always are concerned about potential bias from the judiciary. Here, it's not going to be a single judge that gets a chance to look at this. It will be a panel of at least 3 judges who will have a chance to take a look at this. And quite frankly, there's not going to be a whole lot to look at in this case. This was pretty much a garden variety civil case. Not a lot of rulings that the judge made that were really controversial. In these types of cases, though, there's one area that always causes pause for appellate courts, and that is what we call other crimes evidence. When you allow there to be information put in front of a jury about other crimes or other acts that a person has done, we call it pattern and practice evidence. And a judge will have to decide, or a panel will have to decide, whether or not the probative or relevant information that comes from evidence that comes from that information outweighs the prejudice. In most cases, they do find that it's appropriate. And I think they'll find that it's appropriate here because the circumstances were so similar. You know, this is really a pattern in practice with this man, with Donald Trump. This is how he does things. It's almost like a signature to a crime, that this is a repetitive thing. This is how I approach women. This is what I do to women. And guess what? He said it himself. This is what we do. We can do this when we're stars. We grab them by the you know what.
Well, yeah, here's the thing too with that, you know, these prior bad acts that you were talking about. So I've seen it used a couple of times. One in the Michael Jackson trial, and he was acquitted. Then in the Bill Cosby trial, the second trial, which he was found guilty, and later the state Supreme Court, of course, overturned that verdict. But when they discussed that state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania, when they discussed Cosby's case, they had problems with the prior bad act witnesses, but they did not overturn it based on that. They overturned it based on the previous arrangement he had with the district attorney. So it's a mixed bag. What it does do, right, Attorney Tarver, is it can prejudice the jury to say, okay, if he did it then, he must have did it here.
Yeah.
But it's still a mixed bag as a result, particularly when it comes to celebrities.
And that's exactly what it's not meant to do. You can't take that evidence and say, well, he did it here, he must have done it here. It's only to decide whether or not that's what this person's signature is. So the good thing with the plaintiffs here is that they do have more than enough other evidence to reduce the prejudicial effect of that, if there was any at all. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you didn't even really need those other persons to come in based upon what you heard from Donald Trump's own mouth, his behavior, the things that he said, and particularly that whole picture episode with Marla Maples that didn't exist, where he couldn't even identify her and yet said, that's not my type. Well, you know what? You thought that was your wife, so she must have been your type. It's insane. This is almost like something that someone wrote up for a Lifetime movie.
And also, real quick, Attorney Tarver, the judge did something unusual in favor of Donald Trump. They presented their final witnesses on last Friday. The case was closed. They were headed toward closing arguments on Monday. But then Trump publicly stated that, I may go to New York and testify. The judge heard that and said, you know what? I'm going to give him until 5 p.m. on Sunday. If he wants to testify, we'll reopen the case. That's unusual, isn't it?
No, it's not. And let me tell you why it's not. The one thing that a judge will always do, he or she will always give a defendant the opportunity, the utmost opportunity to defend themselves. And here, where you have someone who has been so publicly virulent against the courts and against the judges, this judge is going to make sure that every angle is covered here. And the other thing is, this judge also knows that if a person does not show up willingly, then you can get what's called an adverse charge. In other words, they can tell the jury that this person had a chance to show up, and by not showing up, you are allowed to take a negative inference that what that person, that the reason they didn't show up is for some untoward, improper, bad, or prejudicial reason. That's a charge that comes out. So before you give that, you want to make sure you give someone every possible opportunity. And here this judge says, no, you're not going to play that game with me. I'm going to extend this and give you more time. Everybody knew Donald Trump was not coming back to New York to testify. That was not going to happen. Look, we saw what happened to him in the deposition. That man is never going to subject himself to real cross-examination, because the fact of the matter is real cross-examination doesn't stop with this particular incident. It goes on to credibility, and you can touch every aspect of this man's life, from the Central Park Five all the way up through his divorces, all the way up through his presidency, all the way up through January 6th, because all of that touches on his credibility.
Well, he was ordered to pay E. Jean Carroll $5 million. Austin Cooper, Austin writes, Trump is an
I think Stacey froze.
Yeah. Stacey.
Well.
Oh.
Well, I guess it's just you and I.
But to your point, the dude is a serial liar.
Yeah. And
it appears that he forgets the things that he's lied about. So it would have been a disaster if he came to court and subjected himself to the type of questioning that we expect that he would have gone.
Well, it lets you see why his attorneys in the January 6th investigation, in the Georgia investigation, and even in the New York case, why they are so concerned, because they know that this man cannot take the stand. And if you cannot take the stand, you can't defend yourself rightfully in a lot of cases. Now, he doesn't have to take the stand in a lot of these cases. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if it's a criminal situation, and if those are criminal cases, he has a right to remain silent. But let's face it, the fact of the matter is, juries can, and will take an inference if you don't get up there and say, I didn't do this.
Yeah.
And so you have to have a powerful enough case on the defense side to be able to really push it forward and do that. And this man can't do it. And he'll get up there and they will just cut him to shreds. Donald Trump is a defense attorney's dream. I mean, I should say a prosecutor's dream, not a defense attorney's dream. The defense attorney's nightmare, a prosecutor's dream. This is the kind of man that you just, you leave law school and you say, if I could just get a guy like this on the stand one day, that would make my entire career.
But what is it, just the fact that folks that a lawyer would have extra exposure, I guess, representing him, because most of them sit in, they don't get their money. So why would you even put yourself through that agony of trying to represent this fool?
Well, look, I do have some experience with Joe Tacopina. I know Joe probably got his money up front. Okay. Joe's from New York. He's not gonna be suckered by something like that. But two things about it. Defense attorneys, in a number of ways, enjoy a challenge. This is kind of what we do. We are in a number of ways thought of as hired guns, and much of what we attempt to do is to take these situations that often seem impossible and to come out of it with a favorable verdict. I know a lot of attorneys who would take this case from a defense perspective. Number one, because it's a civil case and not a criminal case. In a criminal case, you've got different circumstances. Here, we're only talking about money. Okay, you can lose money and you can survive and you can be on the street and make more money. Yeah. You lose a criminal case, the fact of the matter is someone loses their liberty. And that's a huge issue. I have, over the years, represented people in death penalty cases all the way down to simple theft. It's different between a criminal case and a civil case. So Joe's no stranger to controversy. He likes these kind of cases. He likes to be in the limelight all the way back. I guess he had Joey Bud Foucault way back when, and he hasn't looked back ever since. Yeah. This is kind of what he does. But
if you're just joining us, this is Stacey Brown's show. Let it be known, but he's having some technical difficulty. Oh, here he is. You're back.
The power. I just lost power. I wanted to get into
just like the ex-president.
That's a good one.
Uh-huh.
Good one.
Thank you.
So I wanted to
I
ask about the CNN.
I was gonna execute a coup.
Yeah, well, hey,
I was gonna become the
listen, Power 96 that I cut out like the Knicks. That's a low blow. It's a low blow.
Welcome back.
But listen, so I don't know if you discussed this already in my absence, but the CNN town hall. Listen, how much more does that now really looks bad for CNN? How much worse does it look for CNN?
It always looked bad for CNN. CNN, this dude Chris Licht, I don't know how he pronounced his last name. They said since he came in, they claim that he's moving to the center, which is garbage. What he's trying, because they're trying to hire all of these right-wing liars and these apologists for Trump because they claim that they want to represent both sides, and now they're doing this. I think it's a travesty because he basically gets an hour of free time. Makes no sense.
Yeah, the American media is going to have to make some very real decisions about where they're going to go with Donald Trump. Fact of the matter is, the media enabled him for years before the 2016 election, after the 2016 election, not recognizing the danger that he posed. And here we are with a gentleman who faces specious charges across the country in both civil and criminal contexts. You cannot treat him like he is the ordinary candidate, because he's not. And by virtue of just where he stands now, he has effectively disqualified himself from being on a reasonable and rational stage before the American public. CNN has made the choice to put him up there, which is tantamount to propping him up and giving him credibility all over again. So we're going down the same road as we went down in 2016, even after the Access Hollywood tape. Look, as they say, and it's become so cliche now, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And he showed us who he is: an insurrectionist, a person who has threatened to set aside the Constitution, a racist who comports with anti-Semites and racists. What more do you need? If I were just to take someone off the street and say, this person is who we're bringing on as a guest, you wouldn't even bring that person on as a guest if they had those type of credentials.
Yeah. But the thing for me is that it seems like time and time again in this country, African Americans are the canary in the coal mine. Because long before this dude came down the escalator, Black people were saying that he's a liar, that he's a racist, and all these other things. And these other people, they, as usual, they thought that we were just being overly emotional and all that stuff. And it says something about, and I was talking to Stacey before we came on, that everything that we're seeing with the Supreme Court, with the Jim Crow tactics of state Republican-led state legislatures, all that type of stuff, it's a stench of moral rot.
Mm.
And us continuing to, well, in my mind, the universe continuing to show us just how rotten this country is. And so CNN didn't have much credibility to me before this. It has none now.
Mm-hmm.
But the sad thing is that it's not just going to be a small universe of people that's going to be affected by this. Think of what he has done to the country. Think of what used to be the Republican Party is doing to this country. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of the Republican Party, George Santos is due in court today. The charges, they're under seal, but they're believed to be connected to his campaign finances and other fraud charges. This guy has, of course, rose to prominence because of his string of exaggerations and lies and everything else. And the latest with this is he claimed as of late last night, oh, I don't know anything about this, which means it's true. But Attorney Tarver, what might Santos be facing?
Look, the fact of the matter is we're dealing with federal charges here, and we're dealing with what is likely to be campaign finance irregularities, crimes. Quite frankly, I'm going to dispense with this nice language. This man, this man, liar as he is, could not explain where this significant amount of money came from that he was able to raise for his campaign. He first said that it was a donation of some sort. He then said it was money from his own pocket, which either one of those things, it's either one or the other. Either one of those things, if not specifically categorized the right way, which they didn't, which he has not done, as a review of his documents reveal, would be campaign finance crimes. And quite frankly, campaign finance crimes draw up to a 10 to 20 year sentence because it is basically a fraud charge. So, this is the man who we talked about people being able to withstand the scrutiny of cross-examination. Could you imagine having George Santos on the stand? It would be just like comedy. This man has not told the truth about so many different things. Claimed his mother was in 911, claimed that he was a college volleyball player, claimed that he graduated from college when he didn't even do that. All these different claims over the years. He's got a real problem here because the fact of the matter is there's a trail of lies behind him, and he has absolutely no credibility whatsoever.
Hey, Stacey.
Yes.
I imagine that Kevin McCarthy is pretty worried right now with his razor thin majority, and this dude being one of the 4 or 5 that's keeping the House from being deadlocked. So I'm curious to see what he's going to do, how he's going to do it, because I think they're going to do something to try to throw this dude a life raft as best they can.
But you know what, Barrington? Everyone talks about the razor thin majority and this and that.
Yeah.
Historically, over the past year that we've seen, they have not done anything outside of what Kevin McCarthy has asked them to do.
Yeah.
They are in lockstep. I don't believe there is such a thing as really a razor thin majority. These people are locked in, they're baked in, and they are not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Let me just come back to one thing with Santos. The fact of the matter is that Santos, like we've discussed with Trump, he's going to be charged today. Even when he's charged, he doesn't have to leave Congress. Even if he's convicted, he doesn't necessarily have to leave Congress. You have all these archaic rules or the lack of rules that I think existed at a time when people presumed that there would be this level of integrity amongst our Congress and our Senate and our presidency. And now the emperor's clothes have been ripped off, and we see that he has no clothes and that they have no integrity.
Yeah. Well, and of course the debt ceiling situation is coming to play. You talk about the razor thin majority, but Tarver and Barrington, is it finally that Democrats are understanding that this is who they're up against?
No,
because they it's like we'll try and do bipartisan. We'll negotiate. It's like negotiating with terrorists, isn't it?
Yeah, the thing for me is that I used to politics in Jamaica is like blood sport a lot of times, and when I see how weak, and I say it every time, Stacey, how weak and feckless Democrats generally are, they're dealing with a ruthless mob, basically, that doesn't care about the rules, doesn't care about anything except ensuring that they maintain power. They lie, they cheat, they do everything they can to stay in power. And Democrats are like, can we all get along?
But here's the Hobson's choice of the whole thing. The fact of the matter is, Democrats can go down a certain road, but if you go down to that same road, you have forever lost the moral high ground that you claim to be able to have. Now, I don't think there's necessarily moral high ground to that, but here's the deal. Here's where you really see the Democrats are weak. There is so much that could be done right now in terms of media saturation with what is happening with the Republican Party.
Yeah.
I turn on the television. I listen to the radio. I don't hear it. I don't hear the attacks. And the fact of the matter is, Republicans have always been so much better at messaging, so much better at media than Democrats. If you don't work to control the message, then the message will control you. And that's what's going on here right now. The fact of the matter is, they've been successful. They've been very successful at being able to call up, down, and call right, wrong, and get away with it. Because
there's no better example than what's going on CNN tonight.
Yeah. And the thing is that I can't think of any political situation that I can think of where one side is basically giving you the whole damn pie, because the Democrats could be talking about more about what the Supreme Court's doing. They could be talking about more about Roe v. Wade. I mean, in the midterms, they said that a number of so-called consultants told Joe Biden, please don't talk about Republicans and what they're doing with Roe, because it's not gonna sell well. Where did they come from? I hope he fired all of them, because it's a waste of money listening to them, to those clowns. And I mean, Democrats got to get it together. There are friends I have who tell me that Democrats don't really want to be in control. That they make more money just opposing Republicans and saying that Republicans are bad. But that is not enough to really, really beat the hell out of Republicans. And I think the only way that they're going to get off this Trump Kool-Aid fix is if they get beaten time and time again, and then maybe understand that they need to unhook from this poison.
Wow.
But I think it's already too late.
Yeah. Well, speaking of poison, what's been going on in this country, all the mass shootings, the FBI has recirculated a public service announcement. It's really something else to watch this public service announcement. It's a training video for with customers at a bar. They're caught in an active shooter event, and by employing the run, hide, and fight tactics, as well as knowing the basics of rendering first aid to others, the FBI says you can be prepared, empowered, and able to survive the attack. Let's take a look at this public service announcement. Don't know that we get in volume.
Hey, you need to back up. You can't be here anymore. Get out of my face, what, man. You think I'm afraid of you? Get off, man. 911, there's a clip.
Running makes you harder to hit and improves your chances of survival. Don't go up here.
Police, where is he?
By the bar, blue jeans, black shirt. Empty hands up, follow their instructions.
I'm in the direct line of fire if I head for either exit, but I have other options to help me survive. Guys, come on, in here. Come on. Go. Lock and barricade the door.
Both my exits are blocked by the shooter. I gotta stay hidden. I'm no victim. I'm ready for this.
He's applying direct pressure to the wound to stop the bleeding until we can find a tourniquet. In the meantime, turn off your phones Make a plan to defend yourself.
We have to fight to survive. If you control the weapon, you control the shooter. I'll go for the gun. He'll go for his arms. The bartender will go for the head.
Where is he?
We got him right here. Stand
Please,
down.
show me your hands.
Over here.
You can survive a mass shooting if you're prepared. Remember, run, hide, or fight. Run. Wherever you go, be aware of alternate exits. Quickly and cautiously evacuate in a direction away from the attacker. Don't hesitate. Seconds matter. Remember windows and emergency exits. Leave belongings behind. Keep your empty hands raised and clearly visible when exiting a building. Follow all instructions from the police. Don't stop until you're sure you've reached a safe location.
Incredible. That's pretty incredible, isn't it?
It's incredible.
But it's just one problem, Stacey and Attorney Tarver.
Don't say it.
That's not an AR-15.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
right.
AR-15.
I think we were bracing for you to say something else, but you're right.
No. I mean,
You're entirely right. You're entirely right. I mean, look, the gentleman in Texas jumped out of his car with the AR-15 and just started shooting people on the street.
Yeah.
Most of these situations with that type of weapon, you don't have the opportunity to run.
Yeah.
You can't outrun a bullet that can go 6 football fields in 1 second and can completely take off your entire head or any other part of your body.
Yeah.
This is where we are. So nobody wants to deal with the weapon. We just want to say the weapon is here no matter what. That's ensconced. There's nothing we can do about the weapon, but you got to do something to try to make your way around this dangerous piece of artillery.
That's almost like blaming the victim. And they're putting the entire onus of this on the victim when what they really need to be doing is making sure that weapons are on the street. They interviewed a guy from the Texas mass shooting, and he said he found a woman kneeling in the bushes, and when he looked, she had no face. Right?
Yeah, it's horrendous. But as horrendous as this video is, I have said, and I'll continuously say that Americans are disconnected from the violence. It happens too often, and we don't see the results.
Yeah.
Until we start seeing that image that he talked about of no face.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, we're at the point now where it's time to start being real with these things.
Yeah.
People need to see that when you shoot that gun at a person at that velocity, there is no face. When you shoot it at children, they are unrecognizable.
Yeah.
People need to see those images in order to be able to understand how real it is.
Yeah.
And Power 96 says that how about limiting, as you said, Attorney Tarver, access to guns and voting for people that are not like Greg Abbott, aka George Wallace, the segregationist. But we get all of these. You got the PSA now. You got all this talk, and every day almost it seems there's a mass shooting, and it's always thoughts and prayers. Well, because that's really what this PSA is, right?
Yeah. But you know, we're in a political situation where the Republican Party is a wholly owned subsidiary of the gun lobby, NRA and the gun lobby, and they are pretty much like the Supreme Court. No matter what criticism, no matter what anger, no matter what outreach people have, they don't care. They're following their agenda. And the only option that I see for us is to vote them out. But they've made that harder because of gerrymandering and redistricting, because no matter what happens to Greg unless you have the vast majority of Texas voting against him, he's going to win. because of the way that they've drawn the districts and the extreme gerrymandering that they've done. So again, this shows the breakdown of the institutions that supposed to act in a particular way, but all it's really doing is ensuring that these people stay in control, that they stay in power.
Well, in addition to that too, and I'm not sure, I think Texas might be one. It's a couple of states now have, Florida, of course, is under complete control of DeSantis. He has a supermajority there, but a couple of states have now are in the process of giving their governor complete control of elections, meaning that he can overturn an election if there is supposed controversy over the outcome.
I only know about Texas. I don't know.
I think Arizona. I want to. Is Texas?
They're contemplating. They're certainly contemplating in that regard.
Yeah.
So that they've actually done it. You know, that this again, what we're witnessing here is the complete takeover and the creation of an apartheid type state.
Yep.
I've said it from the very beginning that white Americans will never allow themselves to lose power in America, and they will set up the systems of apartheid, just as we saw in South Africa and other nations, that allow them to maintain power while being a minority. And they're trying to address the minority situation by taking away abortion so that they don't become the minority.
But the question, Attorney Tower, is what do we do? Because people still walking around wringing their hands, acting like they don't know what to do.
Yeah, look, there are only a few things that we can do. Look, first of all, we need to effectively mobilize and use the courts. Why are we not bringing more lawsuits like the kind we see in some of these states, North Carolina and others, challenging the book banning? Why are we not bringing these intermediate lawsuits? Look, you know, had in Florida, the one person who said that my child is offended and therefore I can't continue. Well, you know what? My child is offended by a rewriting of history or some of the books that portray white Americans in certain ways that are not accurate. Why are we not seeing those reverse lawsuits? There's so many things that we could be doing, but we're sitting on our hands, doing nothing, wringing our hands and saying, oh my God, look at what's happening. It's time for people like the lawyers, the NBA, the people who should be leading these charges, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and they do a good job, but we got to do more to be able to handle this.
So this is where some people are. Michelle Madison says, how about just don't go anywhere? Supermarkets, clubs, banks, festivals, or wherever.
Huh?
As far as the guns are concerned, this is where some people are, Barrington. They don't want to go anywhere.
I know, but you got to live. You got to eat.
Look at the mass shootings, supermarkets, churches, all those. So, you know.
Yeah. And I guess that's her point, Barrington. They're making it so you are either at least afraid to go anywhere, if not totally afraid, and you won't go anywhere.
This will change when they start turning guns on Greg Abbott and Ted Cruz and all of those dudes.
And that will never happen because they're always protected. In fact,
why would they happen? if it's mental illness that's causing this, someone who's mentally ill is not going to think that they can't get to one of these guys.
Yeah, well, they're strongly protected. Trust me. You know,
and Rashay Richardson brings up the boycott. She says it will speak volumes. Money talks, and perhaps that's a tactic, Barrington.
It is a tactic, but you know we can't even agree on where we need to go eat after this show. So there has to be, you know, because one of the things that I talk whenever I'm thinking about it, I think about the fact that during the Montgomery bus boycott, we didn't have internet, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have all of the accoutrements of the so-called modern age. But yet, for 387 days, they effected a boycott that basically closed down the bus system in Montgomery.
But what we did have, Barrington, we had the social institutions. We don't have them. The churches were functioning. The mosques were functioning. All these things in our community, even just community clubs and things that were functioning. We don't have that anymore because we no longer really have community. Community is a shared space, a shared purpose where people feel safe. Think about it. So amongst us as Black people, how many of those spaces actually exist where we feel that sense of community? Not that many.
Well, we need to start rebuilding community. We need to start doing something because we can't sit down and rest our hand in between our legs and let these people continue doing this and not fight them tooth and nail, fight them when they're awake, fight them when they're asleep. Because in 2 minutes we're gonna be in the neo-apartheid country of the United States.
This repeated, these repeated mass shootings are both a blessing and a curse for the right wing. They're a curse because it continues to put this issue in front of America, but it's a blessing because it's becoming normalized. There is no longer the shock value now when you hear, oh, this number of people shot.
Not even front page anymore.
We're now getting accustomed to saying this is what life is like in America. And that's the dangerous thing about not ginning up and showing people what this is all about. That this is how things happen incrementally. Little by little, you get used to, number one, violence. Number two, losing your right to do things. And you find yourself in a fascist state.
Yeah. Well said. That's exactly where it is at. David Youngblood calls it the new Hungary. Here's something else that's going on. California, as we know, traffic enforcement in Los Angeles should be done. It should be done by police, but people argue no, it shouldn't. And they have developed this task force that has now made a recommendation. They want civilian workers, but only in tandem with major infrastructure upgrades that improve safety along city streets that are among the nation's deadliest. They want the conclusions. They want civilians and not police officers to do traffic stops when it's in violation of the law. This is being done also in Philadelphia, and I believe Utah has put this into effect as well. But they say that they want it in certain communities who have historically had borne the brunt of over aggressive policing, which has made the streets unsafe for Black motorists, Black people in general, and I don't know, Attorney Tarver, to get to the point here, what do you think of this?
Well, look, here's what should happen. If you're going to have civilian enforcement, it cannot be through confrontation. You can't have people being able to stop cars. Can you imagine that? Now, instead of a uniformed police officer, we're just going to have somebody just walk up to your car and say, look, hold on, let me see your license and registration.
We just talked about gun violence.
The real enforcement here, if it is going to work, can only work through photographic technology, where a person who has a cell phone can record an infraction and turn that over. And it has to be done by third party, because otherwise you can have retribution of the person who's actually taking the enforcement action. It's a stupid idea. The fact of the matter is
no, because if you have followed the folks who have explained, who have fleshed out what defund the police means, they have talked about using social workers, psychiatrists, and other people to deal with folks who have mental health issues that the police may, usually end up killing.
How do I differentiate between a person who has lawful authority and some person who's just trying to jack me?
But that's where the problem goes. But you're making it, in my as I listen to you, it's sounding as if you're thinking it's just some dude who's in jeans and a t-shirt. No, these are sworn officers, but they don't carry weapons.
Understood. But they're also not uniformed, as I understand.
No, they're uniformed.
Oh, okay. Well, then
they're uniformed.
Well, here's the thing too. It's fresh in our minds. It should be what happened just a week and a half ago in New York on the train. The Marine choked to death this young Black man, homeless man, and do you want that? The civilians taking it. So the model
they're trained, Stacey. They're not just going to let civilians loose on the street. Everything that I've read and the research I've done, it's not willy-nilly.
Right.
It's people who are employed by police departments who are uniformed, they don't carry a gun.
Yeah, Philadelphia, they modeled theirs, by the way, after New Zealand, where they have unarmed public safety officers,
Yeah.
quote unquote officers,
Yeah.
who work for the city's transportation system. They are charged with certain traffic stops, but it's still legally, Attorney Tarver, it can present some problems, right?
Well, you can vest any group of people with the ability to handle certain things, as long as you're not talking about criminal enforcement. You can clearly vest them with the ability to do that. The problem, though, is so many of these confrontations between civilians and police turn deadly. And if you're saying you're putting those people in those situations without weaponry, without the ability to defend themselves, that could be a problem. Look, let me kind of give you an example. You have someone who has a warrant for a very serious crime, and they get stopped when dealing with traffic enforcement. They are not going to want to have themselves written, and they could do serious harm to someone who is trying to perform that function. So I just think this is something that is, particularly where we are in society now, is something that is best vested with people who can defend themselves and others in those situations.
And that's, I guess, what Dr. Nicole brings up. How is that safe for the civilian if they are not armed? We just talked about all the gun violence, right?
Yeah, but if we revert to the status quo, that means that we are going to be the ones who are dying, as has been the case. So how do we deal with that? We got to find some other way to do this, because too many of our people are dying. Yeah. And I mean, there was a report that they did in LA, I think last year, where they were saying it was between 2 and 3 times that black motorists were stopped 2 to 3 times more than any other group of people by the cops in LA. So that's what they do. And if in the same way that this country is unwilling to deal with all of the proliferation of guns, they're not willing to deal with the fact that the so-called criminal justice system is a piece of shit, and that it doesn't benefit black people, that we are the targets, and they want to, I mean, President Biden's solution was to give police officers hundreds of millions of dollars more money, and not deal at all with reforming what really is a system that can't be reformed.
No, we are the targets in most of those cases, but we're also significantly the victims also of community violence and other violence. And I understand what you're saying with that, but the fact of the matter is that, we can't abdicate the responsibility of police officers and law enforcement officers from doing the right job and saying, okay, we're just going to take you out. We've got to hold them accountable. And the fact of the matter is, you're putting these people in a very, very precarious position. These people that we're calling civilians handling traffic enforcement, these situations turn deadly very, very, very quickly, depending on who you stop and what the situation is. Just think of the road rage incidents we have now. You're talking about almost exactly the same situation, except you're dealing with civilians who don't have necessarily either the law enforcement, physical, or weaponry training to be able to deal with an irate citizen that gets stopped.
Well, even thinking of along those lines, Attorney Tarver, thinking of the so-called meter maids, we've seen violence toward them. They're just doing their jobs, issuing a ticket for an expired meter. And so it's a lot of variances here, Barrington, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID stripped America bare. A lot of the weaknesses, a lot of the structural problems with healthcare, with a bunch of different things. And I mean, being forced to stay indoors for close to 18 months, it's like people have lost their minds.
Well, and doesn't that speak to a larger issue, the mental health again? It's Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, if you think about it, one of the things that I always hear people in our community saying is that we don't talk. publicly about mental health. I don't know if that's changed as much, but it's almost as if America has put a cover over the proverbial mirror. It doesn't want to dig deeply, go deeply into mental health. It doesn't want to look at the issues that are causing us to lose our minds. It doesn't want to deal with reforming, changing, reimagining public safety. It doesn't care about. Look at the homeless situation. Ronald Reagan basically opened mental health institutions in the 1980s, and America's never recovered because all it ended up doing was putting a bunch of people on the street. Well, you go to downtown LA, there are tents and everything.
Yeah, that was Karen Bass's biggest issue. She said last year when she took over as mayor, she said her number one issue has to be the homeless.
Yeah, and I mean, even in DC, they've taken over green spaces.
Mm-hmm.
They've taken over green spaces, and it's always this Band-Aid approach to these very complicated, complex issues, and we have politicians who say all the right things and then they don't do anything.
Well, a lot of it requires money, and the fact of the matter is that nobody wants to really dedicate that money where it belongs. Mental health is an incredibly serious problem.
Yes.
But if you look and try to find out where the real facilities are for people to get help in most of these cities and even in the suburban and rural areas, you will not find them.
Yeah.
You'll find a clinic here and a clinic there. People will go to the hospital with some of these problems, but the hospitals are not capable of handling these issues. So you've got this real big gap. And in a number of ways, that's why we also face this whole issue, to bring it full circle, of police imposing brutality in these situations, because what is really not a criminal situation is a mental health situation that the police decide not to deal with non-lethal force.
Yeah.
So as you said, Barrington, you're getting a whole circle of people not willing to deal with those issues.
Yeah.
Police not willing to deal with non-lethal force when they should. Our mental health system's not filling the gap to take care of people who have these issues. Yeah. And so we're just in a cycle, and it's hard to see where this cycle ends.
But you know what, because Stacey and I, he always jokes with me because I'm always connecting the dots. If you think about the Republican mantra about cutting taxes, if they weren't cutting taxes for these billionaires, there'd be trillions of dollars that could be directed to strengthening and bolstering hospitals, mental health institutions, and a whole range of issues. Homes, there are not enough homes. There's a housing stock shortage. So people are living on the street. The capitalism allows landlords to charge whatever rent they want. Wages aren't going up.
Yeah. And each of the last 4 Republican presidents, as initial acts going into office, have proposed tax cuts on the wealthy.
Yeah.
Each of them.
Yeah.
While not proposing anything on the other side.
And that's the standstill now with this debt ceiling thing. I'm glad you brought that up, but we're gonna have to cut it there and pick that conversation up as we run out of time. You guys, great conversation, great insight. Of course, no better legal insight than from Attorney Tarver. You gotta look him up, Robert Tarver Law Firm, New Jersey. Check him out, and of course, Barrington. Barrington is always Barrington. Thanks so much, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow. We got a special guest tomorrow. We're going to talk about Black fathers, so join us on a really interesting conversation, and we'll see you then.